Hello and welcome to this edition of Bayou Time. I'm your host, Keith Whiteside, licensed clinical social worker with Charitable and Home Care. Very glad you are joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it. And you know, it's this time of year where we're always excited to get news and updates from the people that are having to make decisions. And some of those decisions we're lucky we didn't have to make here this week, but we welcome back to the program friend and colleague, Earl Eues, Director of Charitable and Parish Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness.
Hey, Keith, it's good to be back, and it's a good day in the neighborhood today.
I know that's right. In fact, it's a very, very good day on this particular Thursday. But let's talk a little bit about one of the things that we're really not talking about. And, you know, the good news is we're not talking about COVID because we're not seeing the numbers like we have. We're not seeing a lot of the issues, but it's still having an impact.
Yeah, we still have cases of COVID. People are still, getting COVID. It's not as virulent as we know as it was when it started 2 years ago. It's more like a common cold right now. So what we're encouraging people that if they have those symptoms to please test so that you don't spread it to someone else, because it's still can be spread throughout the through with others. If you're sick, stay home.
Right.
We're not seeing a lot of communicable cases like in large crowds, and we haven't seen an issue in the schools.
Right.
So that was like an indicator for us in the past.
Right. Or our events even.
Or events, that's
right.
correct. So, but it's still here.
Right.
The Omicron variant is what's going around, and the vaccine has been updated to prevent the Omicron coronavirus.
Right.
So the vaccine is available.
So go get your booster.
Go get your booster.
And if you haven't been vaccinated, go get your vaccination.
Yeah, I mean it's the more people you talk to now, most people have had it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
right.
so we've reached some type of herd immunity.
Right.
Okay, but to prevent yourself from getting it,
right.
You may want to go get your booster. And just recently, my sister's friend last week passed away from COVID. He was 57. So it's still around. It's still a dangerous virus. People die from the flu also.
Right.
So,
but people are still dying from COVID. We need to know that.
That's correct. Then I did mention the flu. If you get a chance, please go get your flu shot, because we're probably going to have some flu cases like we've had in the past.
Right, and we're going to have those issues. We need to be aware of that. It's interesting that the very first day of fall, I think we reached 100 degrees on the heat index. And here now, some 1 week later or so, it's really fall. And we've seen some of those temperatures fall, but more importantly, when the temperatures fell, made a huge impact about how and what we're feeling this week versus Florida.
Yeah, we don't wish these storms go anywhere else and affect other people, but I'm just thankful that we didn't have to deal with Ian this week. And good thing for the cold front.
Yeah. Let's talk about how these weather patterns impact each other. Now, look, you and I, neither of us are weather people. Neither of us are meteorologists. But we've kind of gotten some discussions. You guys especially have had some discussions about how the path of Ida and the path of Ian were very close coming in,
like down by Cuba in that area. When Ian and Ida were down south of Cuba, the tracks were kind of close and similar, and the reason they diverged from each other and Ian ended up going to the western Florida coast was because of this strong front that came down, this cold front that we're enjoying today, had come down and actually produced the steering currents to move that storm into western Florida. If that cold front is not strong enough or it doesn't come down far enough, that storm would continue in somewhere into the central Gulf of Mexico, and we would have some effects from that today.
And so it's really interesting how eerily similar these two I-named storms, kind of within, a year of each other. So right at, actually, interestingly enough, 13 months away from each other. How this particular Ian storm, as it approaches the coast, ramps up from a 4 where they thought it might even be a 5. A lot of discussion points that we've had about Ida over the year, about whether it was a 4 or if it was a 5, and those kinds of winds. The width and size of the storms, both very, very large. And just there's a lot of similarities to that. And in doing that, and I know you and I hear it quite often, there's that discussion point about people really struggling as this storm came through. And we've only got about 30 seconds left in this segment, but just some initial thoughts, and then we'll follow up in the next segment.
Yeah, well, we started monitoring this storm, as it came across the Caribbean, and we start talking to other people and trying to get things together. Nobody really wanted to say the H word.
Yeah.
In this area. I mean, and we all had this I call it this funny feeling in our gut. That
Probably a little PTSD.
It's just we prepared for it, just like if we would have came here and we did what we needed to do, but lots of anxiety in the community last week.
Earl, it's really interesting, and I'm glad you brought up the point about, last week we were just not really wanting to talk about it. We're scared to kind of say the H word. And the reason is because we're all still pretty traumatized by the events of the last 13 months, and they'll take their toll.
Yeah, it's we're still trying to pick up the pieces in our community a year later, and trying to get back to some type of normalcy after a whole year. We still have over about 2,500 families still in temporary trailers, and those people are still trying to get their lives together. We still have lots of blue roofs in our parish, indicating that the recovery on those structures is slow, or a lot of them are waiting on some insurance funding. Okay, so when this thing was churning out there in the Atlantic and making its way here, and everybody's kind of watching it, I guess to say, and then showing that it's going to get into the Gulf. And that's when people really get their anxiety up, and really nobody wanted to kind of talk about it. Nobody wanted to say the H word,
right?
Because we were, we and in general, didn't want to have to go through what we went through last year again.
Right. And especially as they talked about how this storm was going to strengthen and intensify.
Well, the Gulf is always warm at this time of the year. Like you said, the first day of fall, we had 100-degree temperatures. So the Gulf, the waters are still warm, and it was indicative of that with Ian as it strengthened when it crossed over Cuba and got into the Gulf. How it strengthened immediately up to a Category 3, then to a 4, possibly around the 5 area.
Yeah, it was close.
But it made landfall as a strong Category 4, just like we experienced here in Ida.
And so the one thing that's really interesting, I've been thinking about this, and I'm always thinking about how on these Thursdays we talk a little bit about emergency preparedness and how we prepare. How differently this week would have been for everybody, but especially for the Office of Homeland Security and for emergency preparedness, had that storm followed the same track as Ida.
Well, we would have, over the weekend, we would have been activated and starting our preparations throughout the parish. For one, I wouldn't be here today.
Right? We would be talking to you in very small pieces of time.
That's correct, maybe over Zoom. But we would, we'd be full-fledged back into the recovery mode again, distributing supplies and commodities and getting the electricity back up and running and the infrastructure. And, heaven forbid we would have had to close the hospitals if we had to. Florida, Western Florida evacuated a lot of their hospitals.
Yeah. and they had to. And I think, quite frankly, they probably learned some things from watching Lake Charles 2 years ago, watching us last year, and really seeing what and how to do. The one interesting thing, I think, on today, as we look at this evening, looking back, what would have happened, we would still be trying to figure out those 2,500 people if they had a place to return to in a temporary home.
Yeah, I mean, they would have, with this type storm, we would have called a mandatory evacuation. We would have evacuated to our point-to-point in Monroe. All the people in the temporary housing and trailers, we would have evacuated them up to Monroe. And then before we can ask them to come back, we would have to assess all their trailers and the locations of where their temporary housings are to see if they had a place to go back. Now, we have a plan. In the event that those trailers aren't available, we have a long-term sheltering plan in case that would happen. But it's just, Keith, we learn from every storm. Whether it hits us directly or it goes somewhere else, we as emergency managers in our first responder community learn from these events that occur in other places. And that's why we go to these conferences and we go to these, like the National Hurricane Conference. There's people from all over the country that go there. And next year, last year the big story was Ida, okay, at the Hurricane Conference. The next Hurricane Conference is going to be Ian. And what happened and what took place and what can we learn and do better in our community that they did over there.
Yeah, and so just a little bit of a recap, 2.5 million people who were recommended for evacuation, more than 2 million people are residences without electricity. And so just a rather marked storm. And I like talking a little bit about how things would have been differently done, how things would be different here and how we're still different. We're still in recovery mode. I mean, I've got a friend of mine whom the bricks of their house that came off are still not addressed. The outside of their home still not fixed. And they're both professionals. They're both working professionals. And sometimes we just don't have that much control over what to do or how to do it. And so I like looking at this differently. I love the idea that we're learning from other alternatives. My brother made a comment once on one of my shows that I had done. I talked about how it's important for us to learn from our own mistakes. And my brother called in and said, how valuable is it that we can also learn from others, not necessarily mistakes, but situations? I'm very glad that we're having this discussion about what we can learn from other people and their situation. But at the end of the last segment, the one thing I was thinking of, my wife and I had this conversation about what it's like for the different topography of different places. We in our area are surrounded by a lot of marshland, and we've got all of this water and marshland between us and where a storm comes in from. And it screamed many, many years ago of levee protection. And I don't think any of us, I will tell you, for me, I'm arrogant in this area because of the confidence that I have had in our levee boards that we won't have issues with flooding. I'm confident in that.
Yeah, well, the levee system we have now with Reggie Dupree and his group over there has done an excellent job, and Tony Alford and the board for the Terrebonne Levee and Conservation District. We couldn't ask for a better levee system than what we have right now. Now, look, it needs to be raised, and they're working on that.
Right.
And we're finally getting federal dollars to assist with that, and so we're very well protected. Okay, compared to some other communities in our area. I mean, just look at Cameron Parish; they don't even have a levee system over there.
Right.
But you look at Florida and where this storm went into. There is no levee system there.
No, there can't be. It's not a possibility. You got the Gulf on one side and the Atlantic on the other.
That's correct. And then they have their barrier islands on both sides of the ocean and the Gulf. And if you get a chance and you go to Google Earth or any mapping program and you look at the way those subdivisions are built so close to the water, and everybody typically has some type of water access.
Right.
To the Gulf. Okay.
Yeah, they either have man-made canals or they have these.
That's correct.
These natural canals. That's where their homes are.
And so when the storm surge came in with Ian, it pushed into those canals and flooded all of those areas. I mean, there's pictures on the news, houses that the water was all the way up to the roof line, to the bottom eaves. That's 8 to 10 feet.
Yeah.
And, you saw people walking around in water up to their waist. Okay, that's 3 feet of water.
3 to 4, right?
3 to 4 feet. Okay, that's 3 to 4 feet in your house.
And look, those are Katrina levels of water.
Yes, yes.
You know, people's houses that were completely submerged. My sister got 8.5 feet of water. There's a placard in her house. It says Katrina water line.
Yeah. And I hope that the people, and I'm grateful that we were able to show this on TV, that our people see these levels and to see the storm surge coming in. And I mean, there's anywhere on the internet you can find these live photos, because so many people have cameras, of all the storm surge coming in. That's exactly what would happen here if we had the same type of storm.
If we don't have Morganza to the Gulf to protect us.
Yeah, because we're protected up to to the levee system, and then so that storm surge will come up. Now you got to remember, our levee only goes up to 15 feet.
Right.
Okay, so any storm surge greater than 15 feet is going to overtop that levee system.
Right.
So people need to be prepared, and our friend Wendell Curall and Reggie Dupre, they always say the levees were built to protect property, not lives.
Not lives. Right.
Okay, so you still need to evacuate even though we have the levee system.
Right. And again, when I say that confidence level, that is because of how other people around the country have modeled a lot of what they do and what they plan to do around what we've done.
Yes, they have. And I want to remind people that we're still in hurricane season.
It's a good point.
Okay.
And let's talk about what October represents.
Well,
'Cause October is here.
October's here, so October is a busy month for us for tropical systems. I mean, since 1893, we've had like 11 hurricanes affect our Louisiana Gulf Coast. So it's still possible for us to get tropical systems. It's not like one major storm a year and then we don't have to worry anymore.
Yeah, our sigh of relief is a sigh of relief for us and some grief that we need to feel for those people in the western and eastern part, the whole peninsula of Florida. A little understanding, because we know what it's like for them to have to go through that. But that breath of fresh air that we've seen come through that kind of helped save us from this storm doesn't mean we're done.
That's correct. That's correct.
And we need to stay very vigilant about that.
Yes, and one thing, continue to, make sure you have your supplies and be ready in the event that we have to evacuate and you're ready to go. And, I'd like to spend the last, few minutes, if you have the opportunity to help the people in Florida through either some type of organization, Catholic Charities, Red Cross, Salvation Army, any of these agencies, or if we have a community group or something collecting supplies to send over there, please try to help as best you can. We had so much help outside of Louisiana, come from other states during Ida to help us, that we need to try to reciprocate if possible, if we can do that.
You know what, Earl? You just encouraged me to do something. I'm going to get a group together and bring some supplies.
Yeah,
That's what I'm going to do.
Just think about what happened to us in Ida
And what we needed.
and they're in the same boat as us right now.
I'm going to get with our local guys and just put out the word. And that's what I'm going to do with some time away. All right. It's been decided. Thank you, Earl. You encouraged me to do that. And thank you for your guidance and your direction. And I'm really, really happy that you and your team aren't at the EOC spending your days and nights talking about what we need to do.
Yeah, I almost have a little bit of guilt.
No, don't.
But
don't. We appreciate what you do and how you do it.
We're sending our prayers over there and whatever else. We may be even sending some people over there to help. So.
Yeah. Do what you can. Help when you can. We want to help our brothers and sisters who need it. And that will do it for this particular segment of Bayou Time. Don't go anywhere. A lot more local programming here on HTV.